I'm Sam. I'm the founder and CEO at Grant Engine. We are in our 10th year and really excited to have you here today. Um, it's been a really exciting time as we have navigated the federal and non-federal funding landscape. Um, and at long last, the SBIR program is officially passed into law to be um, um, back in action after roughly 6 months worth of um, hiatus. We've been very active since that time, but we really wanted to proactively schedule this webinar for this week, given on Tuesday, the president, I guess it was really Monday night, signed into law. And then yesterday, the congressional record reflected the news. So um, we'll get rolling. We've got a lot of good content. If you can please put yourself on mute if you're not already there, you should already be there. As well as if you've got questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will identify those and answer them as we go, or we'll leave time towards the end for time to do full Q&A. And welcome again. Um, Before we roll into the content, I wanted to just say that there's going to be more news forthcoming from all of the agencies. We've got some great news of agencies that have already released SBIR topics, but more is to come. The best way to keep in touch with us at Grant Engine is to sign up for our newsletter and also follow us on LinkedIn. We do a lot of content through LinkedIn, as well as more specific updates on the SBIR program, non-SBIR funding opportunities, case studies of how clients are winning funding across the landscape, and news about future events. So please, keep going. And again, put questions into the chat. And then I see Dan's feeding me a question around SBIR timelines, around the missed April 5th deadline at NIH. And I'm sure that's on your mind and many others' minds, and we're certainly going to get into that. So let's dive in, and we will walk through some content that really matters for you. The first thing I just want to do is, for those of you that are not familiar with Grant Engine, we have been in business where this is our 10th year. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary. And our bottom line on this slide, which is to save lives and extend the length of a quality life, is our bottom line. We're really here in that mission in the life sciences, in the defense world for NASA, and space exploration, energy, infrastructure, really all elements of the federal, state, and nonprofit opportunities, support this mission for us. We are over 76 people, 40 PhDs. We're based in New York City, and we have a number of differentiators and edges that, from our fantastic team, many of which are on this webinar here now, that really converge on two key outcomes for our clients. Number one, we get you funding at a much higher rate, a win rate that is 2x to 4x better than the national average for company grants, compared to the national average. So that success rate is the best in the industry, and we are reliably delivering on that in all areas. In some areas like ARPA programs, it's much higher than that. The other big dimension for us is that many of our clients, all of our clients, have either an extremely happy experience or a moderately happy experience. Every once in a while, things don't go in that moderately or extremely happy category, but we are very keen on fixing that. So everything in your world of what you're doing is hard. Getting funding is among the hardest things you will do. But working with us, that feedback we get from our clients is that it's a positive experience. And those two outcomes, better win rate, great experience, are things that we have spent a lot of time working on and building. And we are very focused on continuing to hone those areas for your benefit. Many of you are on this call because you know the benefits of non-dilutive funding and get why this is useful. For those of you that are on the fence or are not aware or don't really buy into this idea, the advantages are prolific. And they're here on the slide. The key ones on this slide is that there's nowhere on this planet that you can spend a little bit amount of money, whether that's internal resources for you or with a trusted partner like Grant Engine, to get significant funding, $250,000, $500,000 up to $3 million. We've gotten awards for clients in various areas that are $19 million, $13 million, $18 million. ARPA-H's are double that or more. And none of that funding is dilutive to your cap chart. So that's a giant advantage. As well, when you get those series of funding awards, that it provides validation for the equity markets, which are tight and expect to remain tight for the foreseeable future. So those are some of the advantages that non-dilutive funding has. I think another important one is that by spending a detailed amount of time to write down your project plans and develop a very cogent, logic-driven, very tight approach to your R&D, which is required for all of these submissions, that thinking and effort and the wringing out of risk in your plan equals success when you go to actually build your product. So in a very real way, we are here to help you build a great product and a great company. And a lot of that comes from our grant and contract writing process. The balance of it comes from our excellent team's advice and guidance to you as an entrepreneur and a leader in your respective fields. Okay, let's talk quickly about where we are today. So left to right, we had an expiration as of September 30th. We had a really interesting webinar in early March where the legislation was introduced by the two key senators that were arguing back and forth. That happened in early March during our webinar, which was kind of exciting. March 17th, it was St. Patrick's Day. We actually happened to be in DC, and I was in the House chamber when the House passed this bill to bring it into law from Congress. So that was kind of exciting for us. And two coincidences, you can call them. I don't really believe in coincidences, but those were two events that Grant Engine was actively participating in witnessing this great event happen. And then we planned this webinar for this Thursday in the anticipation that the president would sign this into law, and that happened earlier this week. It passed the congressional record early. So we are back in action as an SBIR program, which is great news. There's a slide later on what the details are, but for the first time, it's been approved for the longest time period through September 30th of 2031. It's been a tumultuous time for many groups, and existing contracts have been okay. New awards of year twos have been delayed, and this has been the longest lapse that we've had in the history of the program in the 43 years. We'll have another slide that goes into more detail here, but agencies are moving fast, and that timeline is expected to be faster as we go. The Department of War has actually issued multiple solicitations, one issued under the DoD moniker, another under the DoW moniker, but that happened. Those were on the doorstep. Within hours of signing, those were released. That's pretty exciting, and we'll go into more specifics about what those are, but there are over 100 opportunities through the portal that are open right now on a 25.4 topics that were ready for the previous year and are now being released. There's a DOW fiscal year 26 BAA release 2 that they put under the BAA moniker, but it's an SBIR program. Those are all available. And on down the list, there are all agencies are communicating upcoming deadlines. Kurt, you had a question about the April 5th deadline, and the current guidance from the NIH is that September 5th is the next official date. We have asked leadership within the NIH if they're working on an interim deadline. We have not. That just happened, in the last 24 hours. So we've not heard back yet, which is not uncommon, but that is something to watch for. The current forecast shows for NIH that June 1st, they'll release the official SBIR solicitation. And you can see online the list of racking and stacking of opportunities from CRP for commercial readiness pilot, the phase 2B program, STTR, SBIR, on down the list are all looking to happen for early, like June 1 is when that's supposed to happen. The Department of Energy is going through a bit of a restructuring now. As you've seen, ARPA-E has released project opportunities in the recent past, but there's no real guidance or insight yet as to timing there. DHS, if you've gotten on a plane, hopefully you got on your plane, that has not yet been fully released. TSA workers, as you know, got their paychecks covered, but DHS doesn't have a budget. So that's very much in limbo, and no statements yet from the USDA or the Department of Transportation. Shami, you had asked a question about the NSF. When does that open for project pitches? We have not gotten guidance as of yet, but I will anticipate that to open soon. I would expect that to happen in 1 to 3 weeks. That's a guess, but I think inside the month of when the program gets reauthorized, I think that's a reasonable amount of time for the NSF to move. But one of the themes that you'll talk about here very clearly, and you'll hear from us, is a few themes and takeaways that prevail across the board. So let's talk about those now. The most important takeaway that we at Grant Engine, our partners, our clients that have had a good track record of getting wins, our clients that are on the way to getting wins, is that quality matters more than speed or volume. So there's going to be in almost all agencies a pent-up demand for submission volume. We'll talk about how NIH in particular has provided guidance earlier today around that they're going to review fewer applications, at council. There's going to be a lot of submissions. Partly that's driven by AI, partly that's driven by the pent-up demand, and reviewers will look through and see poor quality very quickly. So this is something we have talked about for years, and you have seen this in the data from 2024, where volume went up and win rates were the lowest they've ever been, at least at the NIH SBIR program. So quality is more important than speed. And how do you get quality? You start earlier. We have data on our website in a blog post that quantitates how much more of a win rate, and it's not small of a difference, you will get by being proactive and starting effectively today or yesterday or last week or last month to write your grants and enable your future success. That quality equals time to reflect on the story, telling the right best story for the context of your product, and that being proactive equals time equals quality, quality equals a higher win rate. So those are the two key takeaways. Some additional key points that we've talked about is I hit the first 1.5 bullets already. NIH came out with guidance this morning that for the October 2026 council, the percent of applications that they're going to discuss in quote unquote most meetings will be reduced to 30 to 35% versus the usual top half. I think that's generally, if you look back at what they actually did, that they weren't talking about all half of the top half winners historically. However, this is a signal that what's going to float to the top is the high quality submissions. So this idea that quality matters was true yesterday. It's even more true today, and it will be even more true tomorrow and in the future. Michael, I'll get to your question that you posed here in a moment, and I'm just trying to catch up to the questions as they go. David, quickly, yes, DARPA is covered under DoD. Dan, you're really helpful in just posing those questions in our individual chat, so I'll pick them up there. So please let me know if I miss anything. But yes, DARPA is technically under the defense appropriation budget, and it falls under that agency. So back to the key takeaways. Things are already moving fast, right? DARPA has said that they will release their SBIR topics under the first Wednesday after the release of things happening. And so that's going to happen soon. Things are expected to move even faster after that. So be prepared. Start now for where you go. The next two bullets are really important. I think how your teammates on your management team, how your partners have responded and transformed to the new normal that's happened in the last 6 months and really the last 16 months in this new administration is very relevant. And I believe it's predictive of how we and you and your peers will react to this next new normal that is now with us. The dynamic of change is consistent and will remain to be dynamic, and change is the only thing we can expect to be the same. And how companies have reacted have been representative of how they act in the future. I am beyond proud of the Grant Engine team. I am beyond humbled by our clients and how we have worked together with our clients during this tumultuous time. We've gotten big CIRM awards. We had one day where we got 2 awards totaling $28 million. We got a USDA award for a client for a vaccine for avian bird flu when vaccines were far out of favor. We have hired people. We grew our revenue. We grew our headcount and team in 2025. And we have seen other players that are in a similar space have to let go people, see a retraction that they've stated that they've had to experience. And the reason I bring all that up is that we have made the investment I believe, the best team to support you as a client in this space. And that team is standing ready to support you for this new normal and what will happen in the future. And lean on those excellent members of our team. That means being proactive and starting now for the next deadline for all agencies. That's seemingly obvious in DoD, where those are due in 4 and in 6 weeks, respectively. But NIH, I think, has stated, well, the next deadline they have signaled is September 5th. But if you do the math on how that's going to go, starting now is really essential. Overall, for all agencies, we think the SBIR program will become more competitive because more people will rush to the dance floor to play in this arena. That that means that quality matters. So that's a theme you'll hear from us today, tomorrow, and all the way through. Um, so let's take a couple of questions. Nick, you asked for existing applications that are scored in January, do we expect this, I'm sure this is for the NIH, do we expect those January submissions that you have a score for to play out today as they would have in January? Or do you expect old applications to face additional hurdles in the context of new submissions that will happen in September, is how I'm reading your question. The short story is that it is going to be more, I believe it's going to be more competitive now, whether you submitted it in January or in kind of August 15th for a September deadline. The benefit that you had by being proactive in submitting in January is you got a study section that I'll say was normally run. Okay. Sorry, that you submitted in September that was scored in January. That was a normal study section, quote unquote. So I think you have a better chance of getting funding because it was following when you submitted in September for a January review, that study section was done in a reasonable way. There were some ad hoc study sections there, but I think you do show a better chance because it was not done in the rush that the submissions will have to happen when you submit for September 5. So I think you do stand a better chance, not because of the supply and demand, but because the reviews were more cogent and thoughtful. And so that's that answer. I think the takeaway clearly here is for the NIH, if the next deadline is only September 5th, then there's going to be a rush to the door for essentially an entire year of submissions, right? Like in one deadline.
Yes, to put a point on it, another way to ask my question is whether things that were submitted in September and scored will be doled out before the new wash of submissions comes in September. You know, it was supposed to be scored and decided on
Yeah.
in January. Do you treat April as January or do you treat September as January?
Yes. So there's expected to be a council meeting before September of this year that will make decisions on your September submission that was scored in January. So that's your answer. So I would treat there's no April 2026 deadline. But for a September submission, we do anticipate September 25 submission. We do anticipate those going to council in this calendar year and those being awarded sooner or later, but certainly before the fiscal year end of September 30th this year. So I think the theme here is, if you were prepared to submit for the January deadline, which many of our clients were, there's going to be a window that opens up for the September 5th deadline. There might be a new deadline, an interim deadline, but if it's only September 5th, there's going to be a window that opens up for submission for the September 5th deadline. The earlier you submit into that September 5th deadline, that increases, they will assign those to study section on an as arrived basis. So if you submit earlier in when that window opens, you have a greater chance of getting your study section of choice and not being relegated to an ad hoc study section or worse. So yes, it gets read as per the September 5th deadline, but whom it gets read by really matters in terms of the quality of that review. And so submitting early and matters. It improves your chances to be scored with a study section that is of your choice, as provided it's a quality submission. So that's kind of one of the key takeaways that we absolutely have is be more proactive. Michael's asking, has anyone heard of how agencies retrieve pre-award costs before or during the extended lapse? So there is that 90-day look back where you receive if once you get an award, you can look back 90 days. That only is relevant for the point in time when you get a notice of award. And so that's relevant. It doesn't apply to what happened before or during the lapse. That only is relevant once you get an award. The period of performance for your NSF grant will be the period of time where your allowable costs can be charged to the grant. So if it happened before or during the lapse and it's inside your period of performance of an active grant, then it's allowable. If it's outside of the lapse, but you get a new award, you can go back that 90 days and cover. Shobha's asking about any updates on the SBIR indirect rates, 40% or 15%. No official guidance is the answer today. But if you're following the courts, many universities have won the lawsuit that they filed against the US government, claiming that their indirect rates being dropped to 15% were not legal. So this is an area where we will ask you to lean on your program manager and team at Grant Engine to give you great advice. I think the best advice we would have is it's situational to whether or not you have negotiated an indirect rate with an agency. If you and I think we have not actually come up with formal guidance from Grant Engine in general for this new SBIR program, which we do anticipate. That's a topic that we will be providing guidance on. It's one thing we just have not had time to really talk to the appropriate parties, think through for your benefit. But that's a great question that you will get an answer to when you sign up for our newsletter and keep attending these webinars. Shobha's also asking about budget limits for SBIR phase 1 and 2. That'll come out as the solicitations are issued. We would expect some nominal inflation to occur, but not a dramatic sea change from areas. There's some really exciting things that have happened in the program around a breakthrough awards, which are really, under the SBIR getting $5 to $10 million that we'll talk about here in a moment. But that's I don't think a dramatic change other than what's in the bill right now. AFWorks, Garrett, when will they drop the next open round? That's a great question. We have heard pretty consistently that the AFWorks program, and there's a lot of talk around this, but not a lot of clarity or action, that it'll change substantially or significantly. There's been no specific guidance on when that will be communicated. And tellingly, there is not yet an AFWorks set of topics been released. So that says something in and of itself. I think AFWorks was one of the vanguards of doing, the military doing things differently, faster, I would say better. Um, and so AFWorks is representative of innovation in the government, which sometimes that actually does happen. So I think it's going to change, and I think it's going to be new and in keeping with a government trend to try and do things faster and easier. Um, um, Ted's asking, is NIH going to issue pay lines? My So this has always been idiosyncratic to the Institute Center. Some do, some don't. Um, and I think we don't know is the real answer. But I think some institutes are going to continue to publish pay lines. One thing, though, I can absolutely tell you is that Grant Engine, if you just Google SBIR pay lines, the first natural search that comes up as our blog post that is not the, but among the highest pages that is visited on our website. We routinely, like every week on the regular, talk to program officers at every agency that we work with, and NIH is one of our biggest. And we ask them, what's the pay line for this cycle for this Institute Center? And they give us some insights or guidance. And to the extent that they know, we gather that information, incorporate it, and publish it on our website. And that web page is a very useful place to go to get real world knowledge. So you can see that on our blog, or just Google SBIR pay lines and our post will come up as a natural search. And there you can see, Kumar, what NICHD's latest guidance are. Watch for that to keep being updated as we get more news as the year progresses here. We'll update that real time as we get new news. So that'll be a refreshed and consistent message of what whether a pay line. But that's the best place to go, Kumar, for your knowledge. Hung, we've covered the start date of the NIH SBIR. We'll get into that here again to review. So I've got questions 13 and beyond that we're going to cover as we go, but I'll get to yours as we go. Let me jump back, if I may, to what's in the bill. We're at the 35 minutes past the hour, and we haven't gotten to some of the heart of it. So let me jump back to the slides and talk next about what's in the bill, and we'll come back to your questions here for everyone. So what's in the bill is an extension through September 2031. So that's 5.5 years, which is really exciting. I'm sorry, 4.5 years, I guess it is now, 4.5 years. Included in the bill is something called a Strategic Breakthrough Award. So this is up to $30 million per project that any agency that's call it of size, which includes defense, energy, EPA, NASA, NIH, NSF, USDA, can add in a breakthrough award of $30 million per project. That's like an extension on, you could call that on steroids. And that's really attractive. I would expect most of those to be in the $5 to $10 million range, and that to happen late this year and early in fiscal 2027 as this program gets put into play. So that's a really bonus round for winning clients that are really going to make a difference in their respective areas. That does have to be matched from non-SBIR sources 100%. One of the big sticking point in getting the SBIR awarded was proposal caps. So each institute is required, each agency, I should say, that does SBIRs starting next year, so that's October 1st of 2026, is supposed to set limits on the number of proposals that are awarded for each small business for each year. And they will cap that 3 months before the end of each fiscal year. So they have discretion on when to do that. And if there's urgent mission needs, which we're hoping that doesn't include SBIR mills, then that can be, allowed. But this SBIR mill phenomena where companies just see the SBIR program as a business model in itself, not money to get funded for projects, has been a draw of at least 20% of the money that's available to you away from true innovation. So that's a good um, that's a good statement, and a good change to the law. We've seen since late 2022 foreign risk assessment be a real problem. There have been improvements, I would say, in the objective sense of the word, to foreign risk and security. There is still a prohibition on awards going to businesses with countries of concern: Russia, Iran, China. Those are the big ones, but you get others as well. Really, China and Russia are probably the two practical big ones. This hygiene, if you will, or just having attention to detail, for making sure you don't foot fault on those areas. That attention to detail and scrubbing of each word in your project, to make sure that you don't foot fault on this dynamic, is very important and really necessary. And unfortunately, you don't get that until late in the game, when you get a notice of award. You're getting JIT requests. We've also heard, in keeping with this, there's some concern around foreign companies supporting clients getting SBIRs that are not US based. So that was an interesting fun fact that we've heard from certain corners. So that's a fact of something to be careful of and mindful of. Also in the bill, there is an allowance in this fiscal year to allow unspent funds between now and September 30th to carry over into fiscal year 27, which starts on October 1st. So that's permissive. It's not mandatory. We've heard NIH will seek to spend their entire funds in this government year by September 30th. And there's some other things that are relevant around training, I-Core level work, and agencies that need to participate there. But these are the big elements that are changing and will make a difference. Here's a bit more of a timeline. So let me go through this, and then we'll jump back to some additional questions before we go into industry segment specific. So there is a compressed timeline. Some would say that's a problem. Others would say, I would say that's an opportunity. And the companies that have proposals ready to submit the day solicitations open will have a decisive advantage. We've been working with clients continuously on SBIRs, and we are starting to work with clients now that the SBIR program is reauthorized right now for DoD pursuits, for NASA pursuits, for NIH pursuits. And that timeline by agency is roughly laid out here. So DoD is open now. There's a May 13th window for some. There's a May 28th window for others. And that release and pacing is expected to continue to be maintained. So if you're in the Department of Defense or War domains, engage with us now. May 13th will be here in a flash, as will the end of May. And so it's very critical to engage with us now to have a competitive submission. Navy issued pre-release topics that will be open on May 6th and then will close on June 3rd. That approximately 1 month turnaround time is not uncommon for the military, and is absolutely difficult to hit. So continue to engage and engaging with the military champions and contacts that you have internally um, is necessary to be competitive within a month. NASA has not yet released their first solicitations, but that's expected imminently. NSF, I think we're looking at a July closing date, and the project pitch should reopen, I think, as we mentioned previously, soon. NIH, as we talked about, the next official date is September 5th. Look for an update here late April, early May. And that will deliver some guidance on an interim deadline, but also how to continue to be proactive. That white arrow is the estimated date when you can submit first for the September 5th NIH deadline. So that's called that August 5th, approximately. To write a winning grant takes 6 to 8 weeks, right? So if you are not starting like in April and May to engage with us, to do a subject matter expert call, review for the how you're going to be competitive, what is the right best story to tell, you're already going to be in this no man's land of submitting when everyone else is submitting up until the September 5th deadline. So the point here is please be proactive. That improves your chances of winning significantly. We talked about those other items, but these other agencies are on DOE, USDA. Let me do one more slide. Actually, let's come back to here and we'll do some more questions. So David's saying the study section assignment comment is confusing. In the past, NIH waits until the final due date, never looks at anything submitted prior to that date, and certainly doesn't mic assignments to study sections. So David, with respect, that's actually not been the case in what we've heard from CSR and from program officers and from our experience of our team members sitting on study section. Those study section assignments do happen as they're assigned, and we saw that earlier in 2026 when they were doing assignments. I'm sorry, in 2025 from the 2024 submissions, there were just so many submissions that they pushed it to individual institute centers, and that those assignments, the groups that were submitted early got their assignments of choice. The groups that did not submit early did not. So that it does matter, and it matters quite significantly. If you got a review from the January 2025 SBIR submission, you experienced an ad hoc review, and it was quite challenging because of how they relegated it. They brought it back to be centralized through CSR now. So that's that it does matter, and that will make a difference. Kumar's asking, when will the notice of award from NIH be sent out when your council review is done? So I would respectfully ask your grant management specialist and your program officer for their timing. If you've gotten a notice of intent to fund, or you've gotten a JIT request and you've responded to those, then that is a sign that you're in good standing. I can tell you that in the last 3 days, Grant Engine has received a wave of JIT requests. It's not small, but those only just happened now because I think NIH was somewhat reticent to go there because the program wasn't officially in law. Now that it is law, those JIT requests are happening, and they're happening at a very attractive volume. It's like you can see those early indicators happen, and it's really attractive. So I think you probably have not gotten a notice of intent to fund, and you may have gotten a JIT request, Kumar. If you have, then that's a good sign. If you've not gotten a JIT request, then that's, approaching your program officers. So Mark's, good to see you, Mark. You're asking, should a grant reviewed in January with a marginal score be resubmitted before the council meeting? Yes, I would recommend that. It is a marginal score. I don't know what that score is. You could look at that impact score and then push that to and just look at our pay line to get a reading. But it is, if you're not sure, best strategy is to resubmit so that you have an insurance policy. Maybe they'll fund the first one, but best chances are that you'll get the one funded that you have. David's asking, what are the thoughts on relationship with MDA and AFRL and IDIQs for non-traditional companies? Let me table that one and come back to that. I don't know that I have a good answer to you, David, or for you, I should say. But I think that one's going to need some research before I can answer that one. But we'll take that question 16 that we've got in our tally as something we'll get back to you directly on. Yeah, David's asking about CMMC. There's inconsistent language about that, especially level 2. That's another one, David, I'd prefer to get back to you specifically on. I think CMMC for the Department of War Defense is important. And whether you go level 2 or level 1, I think it depends on your horizon of how much you want to get over your company's life cycle. I would lean towards going level 2 versus level 1, but that's another one that we will get you a more specific answer on. Alyssa's asking about what do you see as an advantage of submitting before the grant deadline? So one, you get your study section of choice. Two, if you are planning on submitting before the deadline, that means everything you're doing is proactive, and proactive equals more time that you've worked on the project versus waiting for the last minute. And proactive focus allows for you to refine and tell the right best story versus submitting a grant. And that thoughtfulness, the quality that time affords, improves your chances of being competitive. So we've got data on this on our website. So one, you get your study section of a greater chance of getting your study section of choice. Secondly, being proactive of thinking about, I'm going to submit this a week early or 2 weeks early, pushes back your entire efforts that you want to do. And that time of being proactive equals success. So if you wait, then everything gets crunched later. And of all the things you're going to do, funding is perhaps the most important thing. And of all the places you can get funding, non-dilutive funding is the best financial equation for your company. So if you want to prioritize your company's success, prioritize non-dilutive funding with competitive submissions. And to do that equals doing it in a proactive way. Hung's asking, will the grant application be rejected if it includes a support letter with potential customers from China or Russia? Short answer is most likely yes. There's no guarantee of that, but I would, Hung and others, just don't go there in your submission. All right. Yeah. Okay, let's shift our attention to the specific industry verticals. We've got about 7 minutes left, so keep any questions coming. I'm going to try and go through these slides that I've got. So we've talked about NIH, and there's really many areas for NIH, including NSF, which is not on this slide. But there, ARPA-H, we've been very busy. We have multiple research teams. We've approached, at ARPA-H, we've approached every single program manager and gotten to know their programs, gotten to know where they want to pursue that have been issued, getting what's in between the lines. And we've tried to talk to every program manager that has not had a published program to see what that program is going to be so that we can help our clients navigate that through. We're doing that in an open book way. We're not looking for preferential treatment. We're here to save lives, and ARPA-H is a great way to do that. And I would encourage, if you're interested in getting funding for transformative technology development that is 10 years out, that your venture investors won't fund, and is no other source of funding will fund, but it could transform a space, ARPA-H is a place to go. And there's a lot of variability of how they can fund and what they will fund. So I would encourage you to reach out to us to see if it's something truly transformative that is 10 years out that you want to bring into the next 2 to 3 to 5 years to make happen. Then talk to us about ARPA-H. BARDA has been really active and interesting. We've had a lot of good interactions with our colleagues there. We have a number of key advisors that used to work at BARDA who are now part of Grant Engine's team. They're not counted in the 76, but they're very active as key advisors with us. And the BAAs, the easy BAAs are quite attractive. There's 5 accelerator networks that are also really useful to go after. So the funding in the SBIR program at ARPA-H, at NSF, certainly at NIH, are back up. But there's also lots of other funding that's very attractive in other areas, like the OTAs at ARPA-H and funding through BARDA. One thing I just want to share is it feels like it's been forever since the SBIR program was last authorized. And 6 months is indeed a long time, right? Or 5.5 months. It's a long time. But what does it really mean in terms of funds flowing for new awards to you? And this slide is on the calendar, not the government year end. So Q4 here is October 1st to December 31st. Q1 is January to March. This chart, vertical bars, show the dollars that are allocated from the NIH SBIR by quarter. So for averaging the last 6 years. Okay. So in the last 6 years, as a percentage of the total budget that gets spent. So how does money flow across the year from the NIH and the SBIR program? October 1 to December 31st, 2% of the dollars are spent. So that's not a lot. That has been painful for year 2 awardees. That is typically where this plays. But for new awards, not a lot has happened. And basically through now, if you will, if you can give grace on 2 weeks, another 11% gets awarded. So the point here, and the second half of the year for NIH, which is, through September 30th, essentially now through September 30th, NIH is a second half team. Okay, that's when monies flow, and so this is just normally, right? And so if you're worried about how bleak the winter has been, you're not alone. If you're worried about, oh my goodness, how is the NIH ever going to react to this body blow of having the program be mothballed or paused for 5.5 months? If you're worried about the NIH can't do a year's worth of funding in the next 6 months, those are all valid things to feel in the kind of knee-jerk reaction. But if you actually look at the data, NIH is a second half team, right, between now and September 30th. And not for nothing, the month of September distributes over a third of the entire year. And that was even more than that in 2025, when there was so much turbulence on the front half of that year because of the new administration. So money's going to flow. And I think the NIH has said they're going to try and spend the whole budget by September 30th. They can roll it over if they need to, but I think that's their goal. So that's where things stand. I think, again, the guidance that came out this morning, I think speaks to just this theme of there's going to be a lot of volume that gets submitted, in that September deadline. And it is quality really matters. So that's the life sciences. I've got a few other industries that are really relevant. We're at 1:00. I'm going to do this if this is okay with everyone. We're at 1:00. We've got 98 people still in the mix. I'm going to just, out of respect for everyone's time, touch on 2 key slides around Grant Engine. And I'm sorry I didn't have time to get to everyone's question. I'm going to stick around, answer everyone's question. You're more than welcome to stay. I wanted to just show 2 quick slides on Grant Engine, where we are a very thoughtful and we know how to play this game very well at a differentiated win rate in a process that our clients enjoy, which is saying something given how much fun grant writing is. We have a 3-step process for winning. We engage with you to do strategy and planning. That happens during an SME call before we ever contract with you. That's complimentary. Then we create agency buy-in. We do that in a peer-reviewed model where we're looking to engage with you and have you engage with the program officer, that if you get a competitive score, that can help later. But for areas like the Department of Defense, for ARPA-H, that is mandatory to be successful. We do that across the board of seeking to create agency buy-in in a peer-reviewed area where you can't do that. You're not appropriate. We don't do it because it's not appropriate. We still have to win at peer review. But once you get a competitive score, getting an award for an impact score that's just above or right at the pay line can make the difference and will make the difference. We've got an excellent conversion rate of impact scores that are just above the pay line. So that agency buy-in is mission critical. And then we write the proposal with you and really for you if you engage with us on Flagship. We leverage a top flight team. It takes about a year for quality talent that we hire to become a full-time lead writer with Grant Engine. That's because they're learning our process, learning from what wins and what kills grants. We always do external review of people that sit on study section, their conflicts cleared, and we use them to hone, shape, and dramatically improve a proposal before we submit. That greatly enhances your win rate. And pardon me, regularly we are training our team on what wins and what works. We've got primary work that we are doing, primary research that we are learning in a neurological phase 2 medical device application. What are things that we've learned around biostatistical plans that are unique for that space, as opposed to a cardio med device phase 2? Like, we go to that level, we understand who sits in study sections from that census, or at least who has in the past, and their their population of academic versus industry. That changes how you write, because you always need to write for your audience. And hundreds of other steps that we have in our process that we have honed, continue to refine, and continue to improve for your benefit. The team is the catalyst for making that real, but our proposal preparation is highly differentiated, and we also seek to make it a good experience. And so I think that shows up in the numbers, but it also shows up in how it feels for you. So that's a little bit about what you get, but you don't really understand it until you got a chance to work with this fantastic team. If you want to get started with us, we need what we call a product funding strategy questionnaire, or a PFS. If you email us on funding@grandengine.com, we will happy to have a meeting with you, walk through our process, differentiators, and economics. And we are then schedule a subject matter expert call with you to review your unique product under an NDA that's kept at close hold, to assess how you can be competitive, whether or not you're ready, and how we can work well together if that's what you want. If you want to do it yourself, you still get a really useful set of feedback around what we have learned from that discussion. So that's something we're investing in your success on. So let me jump back to some questions. I'm going to keep the key takeaways here as we do that. So, and I appreciate everyone staying. I'm going to stick around until we're done with questions, but if you need to depart, fully understand, but appreciate everyone that is staying the course. Anna's asking, what might be the changes to the pay line for 2026 based on JIT requests? Yeah. So I don't know as this is going to go, and it's a reasonable prediction to say that pay lines are going to become lower, right? This is like golf, low score wins. And that means you're going to have a better score to get funded. And I think that is a function of what happened in 2024, where AI drove a lot of volume and really poor quality. It's also a function of human behavior, right? The program's been on pause. Many people have not smartly or very dumb move to sit on the sidelines, like in the last 6 months. Like that's the worst move you could have made. And I get it. You don't have a program. You're not sure if it's going to get reauthorized, but that was not a smart move if you did that. Because what that means is now the program's open, everyone's going to run and try and get something in for September. If you start now, you got a great chance for the NIH. If you start now for DoD, you got a great chance. But dollars to donuts, many people will wait, and that will equal volume, which is hard to parse through, and it will equal lower quality. So I think the pay lines, by definition, have to become more competitive. It's going to become more competitive because of more demand for the set supply. So I think things are going to get more competitive. That means quality matters. That means that starting early equals higher quality, which equals more competitive. Parjat's asking, how much more before the deadline do you suggest we submit? And I hear you, the 2 week, if you finish 2 weeks before, those last 2 weeks are really useful to improve the quality. I think those last 2 weeks before, let's say, a September 5th deadline, I think I would say that is approaching being too late. I think the last week, for sure, you're too late. But candidly, many people have been working on grant programs in this interim timeline. And so we're not the only ones thinking of this great strategy. And so I think there is going to be a meaningful volume of submissions that happens on as of August 5th for the September 5th. And that could be open, that could open a little bit earlier than August 5th. Usually it's a month before. They open up the application window a month before the September 5th deadline or any deadline. So I hear you, and you're totally right. Those last 2 weeks, honing the message, and having that time is valuable. But what you're up against and what everyone is up against is companies that have engaged with Grant Engine where we were working on these projects, in December, in November of last year, in February of March. Now we're turning things on for new clients and honing things for the projects we were working on for what was an April 5th deadline. So if you're working with Grant Engine, you're going to be proactive and you're going to have the best chance of getting what you want. So, and we're not the only ones probably that have that great strategy. I think we are disciplined and highly proactive. So I think that's a choice you're going to need to make. I can just tell you, if you submit earlier, like I hear what you're saying, and you're right about having more time those last 2 weeks. The game, I believe, is played at its most evolved form when you make those last 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of July, right? Or August. Like there's no reason why you can't do that now, because the world, your preliminary data and other external factors aren't going to change in the month of August materially, that you can't do that now. So why wait for that, to start that project in July when you can start it now? And I think that's the risk you run by not being proactive. And I think that risk is not small, given we're not the only smart folks. When we try and be smart and smart. I think we're trying to be humble more than anything, but I think others are going to follow that strategy. And I think that's the risk you run by submitting, a week before the deadline or 10 days before the deadline. So how can you start? Victor asks a great question. How can you start preparing your applications if the NIH hasn't released a topic yet? So that's a good question. And over 95% of the dollars that NIH spends get funded through the omnibus solicitation, which means they have things that they like, but they're really taking any problem that you might have, and they are funding it based on the merits of your proposal. So for the NIH, if you've got a disease that has an unmet need that's significant, and you have a solution that has a differentiated position to address that clinical unmet need, then you already know the problem exists and you can tell your story. The omnibus will allow you to submit that project under the omnibus solicitation. So that's worthwhile to go after. So you don't need to know topics. You can go after something that's a clinical unmet need. Lisa's asking, should you reach out to program managers directly or let us do that on your behalf once you provide with the grant application topic? So our approach, Lisa, and for everyone, is that we're here to make you successful, which means we want you to have that relationship with the program officer. They want to talk to the PI, they want to talk to the signing official, the leadership within your company. So what we do, I would recommend reaching out to program officers at NIH, at DoD, to talk to the command centers, the PEOs, other corners within the military. Talk to the program officers at NIH, talk to the program managers at ARPA-H. And I would recommend you do that directly. But with our clients, we prepare you to do that very well. We give you a outline of a script. We tell you what topics to cover, what topics to stay away from. we're on a chat while you're doing that to help guide you. We will weigh in. I think program officers at NIH respect us, lean on us to help them answer questions that they don't have time for. Program managers lean on us to help enable their success. So we're respected and we are looked at as a partner with these funding agencies, but we're really here to make you successful. So how you do that well, we can help you do that. And I'd encourage you to reach out to us to do that. A fast track application, what's the probability of a win? What's the winning application look like? That's a great question. And Lisa, so the short answer is you need a profound story told very simply. You need to have an approach section that is deeply researched, has a level of rigor that drives confidence and has a logical chain of experiments that, and when knitted together, reduce the risk of failure and increase the risk of success dramatically. So there's not enough time on an hour call to give you that, and in this call to give you an answer to that question, but we'd be delighted to answer that question on an SME call and happy to do that. If you want to just send us an email to funding@grantengine.com. We can have that conversation for your specific application. There's also a lot of good content on our webinar. On our website for previous webinars and that content. If you go into our events side of our website, that'll give you lots of good content where we've talked about specifically how to write a winning grant. So there's a lot of good detail there. Shiva's asking, what if you have an NOA fast track for the phase 1 of an NIH and a phase 2? You've got the phase 1 done. Now you're going through the paperwork of getting your phase 2. That's a great question. We've got a number of clients that are facing this joyful process. I would say continue to be very full of your foreign risk assessment, because companies can get pinched at the phase 2 portion, where they got the phase 1, but they are still doing foreign risk assessment on phase 2s of a fast track. So be very mindful there. And then I would engage with your program officer and your grant management specialist. I would imagine your phase 2, if the program had been running, you would have gotten it already. So I would engage with your program officer saying, hey, we issued our phase 1 report. We're ready to go. When can we do the phase 2? And if you want our help to do that, we're happy to help provide support there. But I would engage with your program officer to ask about that phase 2 release, like now. And the last thing I'll say is that your success in reaching the aims on the phase 1 are essential, right? So if that report's not done, that's your homework to help make that a success. So we didn't have a chance to cover a number of topics, but we're going to, given the time of day, put a pin in the content. But I think we covered all the key takeaways that we wanted to cover. And I want to thank everyone for joining. And we are here for your success. Please reach out to us and we will address any those 2 questions that we did in a follow-up email. So thanks very much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day and please be in touch. Thanks. Bye-bye.